Hey everybody, this is Marshall Townsend. Welcome back to day 7 of the Growing Leadership blog. I'll tell you, I've gone a little bit late this evening, the sun's setting, but I was going back and reviewing some of the classes that we had over the weekend with the John Maxwell team. And again, they were awesome and I'm taking notes. And one of the things I reflected on today as I thought about what I've learned from John Maxwell is what he does every day, the consistency of what he does every day. Because see, consistency is so important to establishing a connection with your customers, with your clients, with your team. Because if you're consistent, they start to know what they expect. They know that you're going to be there and they can start counting on you. So they won't invest in you, in your company, in your business, if they don't think that you're going to be consistently there for them. And that goes for a lot of things. I'll tell you what, would you go to a doctor who you had the feeling that, well, he's just here for the day. And the doctor's office, everything about that is not going to be there next week. No, you're going to be really reluctant to use that person. It's the same way with your company, your business. But one of the things for consistency that John does is there's 3 things he does every day. Is 1, he reads, 2, he writes, and 3, he files. Now, part of his writing is he records notes when he reads. So it's probably an extension, the best way to describe it is an extension of reading and writing and then filing, is that he records those things. So what he does is that when he reads a book, and I really love this, as I listen to him talk about it, is he highlights as he goes through the book. So he takes a little note and he sees something, a quote or a comment that he really likes. He'll put a number next to it and identify what the topic is. You know, it could be leadership, it could be consistency, it could be engagement, it could be any of the topic. And then he goes back to the opening of the book and writes down the page number and puts the word. And then continues on as he goes. And this is probably, and I don't think he does this on his first read of the book, but he goes back. So as he goes through the first time, he highlights those things that catches his mind, then he goes back as he finishes the chapter and then identifies it. After that, he then collects all that and records them on 3x5 cards, which then he's going to file. And I'm going to talk about that in a second. But as I listen to him talk, I reflect back on my time in my history of being an author, a writer, over years and years, the amount of information that I've lost in time. So, for example, way back in the 80s, I was asked to write the first mission training plan for combat arms in the Army. It was the first mission training plan. It was a tank platoon mission training plan, and my job was to design the STXs and draw the pictures and develop all the TNEOs, training and evaluation outlines, by taking them from an existing document, which was called the RTEP, Army Training Publication, the RTEP, and turning it into a portable mission training plan. Okay, so but to do that is I wrote each of the tasks, the TNEOs, training and evaluation outlines. I didn't just transfer over. I injected into that new information that was going on. It's because at that time, all the TNEOs before that had been written in the 1960s. In 1987, we had a new tank on board. It was called the M1 tank, the Abrams. And I was fortunate to be one of the first 2 tactics instructors for M1 tanks in the Army. So the knowledge we had started to gain from the implementation of the new pieces of equipment, I was injecting in that into the writing as I went. But also, I went, because it's 1986 and 1987, at that time we had a lot of people from all over the world that were at the Armor School. So I was able to have the house for dinner an Egyptian officer. Now he was a very interesting, he was a major, and he had lost his tank. He had been blown out of his tank in the 73 war. In fact, he had lost his entire unit. And he was part of the Egyptian army that had come across the Suez Canal, attacked into Israel, And and the Egyptians built bridges and everything to go across the Suez Canal. And when the Egyptians got all the way into Israel, the Israelis counterattacked it and went around and seized all the bridges, basically trapping the entire Egyptian army east of the Suez Canal. And in that, he had lost his entire unit, had been blown out of his tank. So this was a great guy to be able to sit and pick his brain on what tactics were, and what it was to be in a firefight, and what was gauging, and then include that, include lessons learned in the manual. I was able to talk to a Jordanian officer who had been hit with TOW missiles, which they had no idea what a TOW missile was at the time, and he had lost his entire unit on the eastern front over where the Israelis were fighting against the Jordanians and the Syrians. I had a sergeant who was there as an advisor. He fought in the Golan Heights because he got trapped there. He got trapped as an advisor and couldn't get out. So he was there during the fight of the Golan Heights. And so I was able to pick his brain and learn lessons or not, and also sit with Israeli officers that were there. It was a very interesting time. If you think about this, the Army School, that in the Middle East, we had Saudi Arabians, we had Palestinians, we had Jordanians, we had Egyptian officers, all there at the Army School, in kind of a melting pot of learning. And at that time, they were more experienced in tank warfare and open warfare than we were as Americans, especially the guys that had fought in the 73 War. But lessons learned for that. All those notes, and why I was talking about that, well, all those notes were lost to time. I had no way to file them. I collected them. I had them. I used them. Yes, they're recorded in. I hold up the book, the original copies of that book from back in that time. My writings of that book that later was published the next year or so in the mission training plan, and that book was in the hands of every tank platoon that went in the Desert Storm. Every tank platoon went in the Desert Storm had a copy of the mission training plan that had those lessons learned in it, right? But all my notes that were there to create that lost to the agent. Gone. I had no filing system. So when I hear John talk about having a filing system, it's absolutely critical. Because right now, what I do is I'm not there yet. Because whenever I throughout the course of the year, I take notes and I fill books up with my notes, right? Right. So I'm constantly writing in my notes on the day by day of things I've learned, the thoughts, the things I read. I read something, I extract it, I put it in my book. And my latest one is just started here last month, and I continue on. I've already got a good portion of it filled out. But what I didn't have was a way to extract all that from the books. So when I sat and listened to John talk about a filing system where he took a 3x5 card, put a topic at the top based on the topic, and then took that 3x5 card and put it into a filing box under A, B, C. It really made sense to me to be able to go back, take a book like this, extract out of it all the lessons, all the key statements, all the teaching points, extract it and capture that and put it into some sort of filing system that I can access. And then I don't need to have this book sitting around because once it's in that book, once it's in, the 15 laws of growth. If I take a look at the 15 laws of growth, I have highlighted so many teaching points in here that throughout, but they're still in the book, and I haven't extracted it. So what I did when we ran Speakers Club last year, this was a challenge to the members of our Speakers Club, was to do this. Start collecting quotes, start collecting information, start collecting things to talk about, start collecting ideas. And if you follow me over on my Instagram account, MT2 Leadership on Instagram, you'll start seeing where I have pulled out of my box quotes. I put them on 3x5 cards, or I put them on 5x8 cards. Little quotes. What is this one? Recovery. It's in R, and it's digging out means digging in. Dig deep and make it count. Ooh, that was a good quote. What do we got? We got anything from attitude. People may hear your words, but they feel your attitude. Good quote. That's under A. Now, what am I going to do with those? Am I going to use those right away? Am I going to use those right now? No. I may not use those for years to come. But when I come back and I start looking for an idea and I start looking for things to talk about, I've already started to collect. I've already started to gather information. So instead of trying to come up with an idea and then going out and researching the internet to try and find, resources for that, no, I already have the resources and I can go back to them and with a new eye every time, think into those resources and come up with the topic or the subject that I'm going to speak about or something that I'm going to include in my book. We talked a little yesterday about this dead man quotes, right? One of the problems I always saw with dead man quotes is they're always great to hear Napoleon, General Patton, George Washington, great quotes all out there, but they were never connected to anything. They were just quotes that went up on the board. So our ability to now take information and then put it there to when I need it, I can go actually get out and reach it instead of having to dig back to the book. Here's what I know. Now, the greatest waste of our time is looking for something that's been lost. And I know that we have all dug back in the book trying to find a quote, or find a statement somebody made, or searching the internet for something that you remember seeing or hearing, but it's lost where you can't find it. And we spend a lot of time doing that instead of having a system. And I learned that from John. I was amazed by that process. So for everybody, what I really like about that, that's something you can start doing right now. You can start today, take the 3x5 card and writing down a thought. In fact, I wrote that one right there just as I started. Greatest waste of time is looking for something lost. And then I'm going to file that and remember that. By the way, here's another little thing. When you write this down, it goes in your brain. When you write it down, it sticks with you instead of typing it out or just taking a picture of it and putting it in there or just copy and pasting and put it over there. No, when you physically write it, you remember things. That's blog number 7. And it's focused on read, write, file. Be consistent every day. And next thing you know, you're going to have resources that are available to you for speaking engagement, for writing engagement, for just improving your growth in everything that you're doing. Once again, I'm Marshall Townsend with MT2 Leadership, and this is the Growing Leadership blog. This week, I'm going to be launching my Mark Your Ball event. Look for the links down below, and I'll be putting out some advertisements here. So get signed up. You can come to get on the Growing Leadership closed group on Facebook, and you can listen to that presentation of the Mark Your Ball. And that's going to be a 12-week workshop, and lesson 1 is going to be on this Thursday. Thanks again. Have a good evening. Bye now.